Hello everyone, my name is Ann Purvis and I'm one of the coordinators of the Toronto Field Naturalist Juniors program. So glad everyone is continuing to explore nature and draw it during this beautiful winter and the pandemic. We start out today with art from several of our members who joined Sandra's art class this winter. Sandra encourages each student to follow their heart and draw just what they find beautiful. Amara loves clean lines. This is her drawing of a deer on the right. Sonia, Abby, and Mila love color. Here are their drawings of white-tailed deer, chipmunks. Abby's is in the middle, Mila on the left, and Sonia on the right. And barred owl. These are all winter animals we enjoy in our Toronto ravines. It has been a magnificent winter with sustained cold for ice to develop and stay put. Some people have had backyard ice rinks that have lasted for weeks. Rivers have frozen solid and it is possible to skate and walk for kilometers on them. Jim and I walked several kilometers to get to our property on the frozen Trent River. Here are some ice formations Amara photographed. I think some of us might recognize these winter birds of prey. The red tail has a faint barring across the center of the belly, and the Cooper's hawk has rusty horizontal bars right up the chin and a skinny striped tail. Birds of prey have binocular vision like us, so they are looking straight out over their beak. In these interesting photos captured by Jenny, the red tail is looking down on the ground and then off to the side. This is how they hunt, perched on a branch, waiting for movement under or on the snow. One thing that strikes me about both birds is their yellow feet. Why do so many birds of prey have yellow feet? I looked this up online and there are some very cute explanations. One person said, yellow feet with black nails? Hazard tape for nestlings. Someone else said feet are more visible on a carcass so they don't actually tear their own feet. Someone else said maybe a common ancestor had yellow feet and it's a pure accident. And finally, the biological explanation. Someone else said it's a sign of fitness for female raptors and they go for males who have yellow feet. How do we know which woodpeckers sculpted any particular tree? Pileated woodpeckers, big as they are, love carpenter ants. So they rip apart large patches of tree bark to expose big ant galleries where they can harvest millions of carpenter ants. So these are some lovely photos of a pileated, hard at work, exposing the bark of the inner wood of a tree. Red bellies. You see the red patch that runs down the back of the head, which is quite distinctive, are quite omnivorous and will eat insects. They also eat seeds and fruits from dried winter plants. They are a pair that they will stay together for many seasons after they pair up. One interesting thing about red bellies is that they often excavate a new nesting cavity, even in the same tree, below last year's holes. You might see multiple holes in a vertical row. House finches are very social all winter and hang out in flocks, large and small. Marina took this photo, and she wondered, what are they doing at this time of year? The formation of a pair bond can take quite a while, starting in February, so starting right now, and leading up to nest building in April. Once a pair is bonded, that bond can last all season, with several broods being raised. It can also last many years. We do get them at our feeder. House finches originated out west, so in the Minnesota area. And there, the first step to pair bonding is that 10 birds or so form a circle on top of a large shrub facing inwards. This is called a lek. This has been observed to take place on top of flat buildings in our area. A pair will then fly off from this lek. Then the male sings and does butterfly flight to win the female. He slowly climbs to a height of 20 to 30 feet and then coasts back to the perch with continuous singing. Later in courtship, the male will hop closer to a female, dropping his wings and swaying side to side with his tail quite high, such that the ornamented rump feathers are held higher than the head crown. He might do this with nest material in his beak. After a few weeks of doing this kind of behavior, typically a month before nest building starts, the pair starts billing, a behavior that develops into courtship feeding. Typically, as members of a pair perch together, one bird leans toward the other and gently pecks at its partner's closed beak, often giving a soft twittering call. Billing leads to displays in which the male pretends to regurgitate food, and the female assumes a begging posture by fluttering her drooped wings, tilting her head, and giving excited call notes. Finally, the male begins to feed the female. Pair formation is a long process with all these steps. It probably takes a couple of months for a pair bond to form, but it is quite lasting. I couldn't help wondering what stage this pair is at. It is early in the season still, February, so this is probably the season of butterfly flight. Something else I just love about these two birds is seeing them standing on the snow. I just think it's delightful the way their little feet are spread out like little snowshoes, and they're right on the surface. They don't sink in at all like we do. The porcupine makes a very wide swath in the snow as he waddles along. Jim and I found such a trail on our property, and we followed the porcupine's trail to a tree where we found him perching, hanging on with all 4 feet. Jim bent the tree, and this is how he reacted. No, he could. He could cause a lot of trouble. Oh, poor guy. I think porcupines defend themselves by backing up into a predator. So this is probably what he wants to do. He wanted to try and stick some of his sharp quills into us. This is where he went, hiding under this log. No, he could. He could cause a lot of trouble. Oh, poor guy. So this is where he went. He's actually hiding under this log here. His den must be under there. We saw this raccoon family on the East Dawn Trail in February. I was wondering what the story was with so many of them together at this time of year. They were out of the den, which I thought might be quite hot on a warm winter day with all those bodies inside. Raccoons sometimes breed in early summer, so late June, and it takes 2 months for the babies to be born. The babies are then nursed for another 2 months, so that brings it to November. Apparently, at this time, babies are independent and can leave the mother, but families usually stay together till the next time the mother gets pregnant. So these little raccoons are probably about 5 months old. And I think we could see at least 3 of them, 3 babies. And the big one is probably the mother. On the same hike, we saw these otter slides on the East Dawn. Apparently otter love to slide, but it is also a huge energy savings, and they will slide anytime they can instead of walking, sort of like using a skateboard for us. We saw a hairy woodpecker actually removing the outer layer of bark from this ash tree. Sorry, he was too high up to be able to photograph him. Ash trees have been under attack by the emerald ash borer. We think that this Hairy was going for the emerald ash borer pupae. The ash borer lays its eggs on the bark of an ash tree in May. The larva hatches out and feeds on the cambial layer of the tree just under the outer bark till September. Then it curls up in a cell in the outer bark and pupates there. This means the woodpecker gets to eat a fat, fully formed borer pupa when he finds the hole. Hairies can remove 90% of these terrible pupae from a tree in one winter. And we found that this kind of damage to the ash tree was all over the tree and all over many of our green ash trees. So I'm going to be very curious to find out whether this has actually saved the tree from the borer, and whether the tree can recover with this much of its outer bark removed. So the next 5 slides are tracks observed by Alexi and myself. I would ask you to please make up a game sheet and place your answers next to the correct letter. So A, B, C, D, and E. Each slide has a letter, and you can guess what animal you think made that track and then place the name beside the letter on your game sheet. And the last slide has the answers. So this is A, put your answer beside A. Also include what you think the animal was doing when you see the tracks like this close together. So this is one track on this side of the log and then another track deeper in the trail on the other side of the log. So this is C. You're going to place what you guess beside the letter C. This is a blow up on the right of one of these tracks. Okay, so is everybody ready for the answers? So we think the first slide, the deer was pushing away snow to find grass, or else browsing on a shrub perhaps, or buds on a tree. In the second slide, a deer was galloping, probably after hearing us approach, because the large prints, the prints from all 4 feet were very close together, and it looked like the hind prints were ahead of the fore prints. And the third one, these were opossum tracks snooping around our front steps. So you notice that the thumb and the 5th finger were spread really far apart. So they have a very funny hand where all the fingers are very stretched out. And it's kind of round in shape rather than like a raccoon with a kind of an oblong shape. And the 4th one was mink in Taylor Creek Park at dawn. And if you recollect, if you watched the webinar in the last blog post, which was excellent, you will remember that mink have 5 toes, but they're kind of arranged in almost a question mark style. And then the 5th one I saw in our backyard, and I was quite astonished because we see this tail drag between the tracks with rodents. But this is a very large track for rodent. However, it has been observed that rats have been more common in people's yards during the pandemic because restaurants are closed and they can't get the scraps of food in those kinds of areas, and they moved into residential areas. This is a nest with a mud layer. Not too many birds use mud to make a nest. Robins are a common one that many of us would have seen. If you look closely at a nest, you can see what the nesting materials were that the bird used, and this is a good clue to which bird it was. I believe this nest was made by hermit thrush or a veery because there were small rootlets in the inner layer, which a robin won't use. When I brushed away the snow on top, the nest was full of broken seeds. It appears that a mouse had moved into this nest and used it during the winter. And I just want to say that that is one reason why we don't normally remove nests. This one actually fell out of the tree when I pulled it down to look at it. But we should not really remove nests because other animals do actually use them. And some nests are reused by the same bird or by a different bird. And finally, the master architect of nest builders is the yellow warbler. This is one of my favorite nests of all time. So we were studying this to figure out how many supports there are in this nest structure, and you could give it a try. See if you can. Jim and I thought there were 7, but you could see if you can count them and verify that we were right. And also, another fun activity is to try to see if you can figure out what materials were used to build the nest.